You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you, wrapping up what was ultimately a profitable weekend for the Braves in Los Angeles, but unfortunately, in one of the columns where it just seems to keep adding up, the Braves may be facing another major injury scare. We'll talk all about that. We'll, of course, preview the big series coming up on Tuesday as the Braves and Phillies meet for the penultimate series and head-to-head matchup between those two clubs. Could that become more intriguing down the stretch? We'll get into all of that. Before we get started, though, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube, and to Locked On Braves, wherever you get your podcasts. And we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon. Use the code all lowercase, Locked On MLB. That's all one word for a first deposit match of up to $100. Jake, I'm excited to talk about what was a series that the Braves needed to win, a series that they did win, a winning road trip, all of those things. We're going to get to all of it. Unfortunately, all of that is tempered by the fact that the Braves are holding their collective breath to find out what the extent of the injury is to Austin Riley, who was hit in the right hand or wrist by a pitch in the first inning. And we don't know what has happened yet or what the extent of that is yet. And we're not going to find out for at least another day.
Yeah, it's one of those things that your Braves just can't have much go their way this year. You win a series, but at what price? Once again, you lose Soler after winning a series in San Francisco, and now you potentially lose Riley. And hopefully got good news on Soler. But for Riley, I think a lot of us are, you saw how hurt he was after that one. Riley's, he's one that can shake stuff off like that. So obviously we're speculating at this point, but certainly with the way the season has gone, not many Braves fans sleeping well tonight.
Yeah, it just doesn't give you a great feeling. And you mentioned, the history that the Braves have had, injury history here in 2024. I know some people have told me, they're tired of hearing it. It's just excuses, et cetera, et cetera. Look, the injuries are the context around this entire team. Are there some other things that have gone wrong? They absolutely have. But when you start factoring in losing last year's National League MVP, the ace of your pitching staff, and other multiple stars and important contributors for weeks, if not months at a time, that's going to take a toll. And right now, Jake, I don't need to tell you, and I don't need to tell anybody I think out there listening, time's running out for the Braves. So a lengthy absence for Austin Riley would be something that they very much do not want to be facing.
Yeah, and something I don't know that they can afford with, they're clinging to just a postseason spot at this point for that last wild card spot. So it's something that they really do not need at this point. And it's frustrating too from, obviously fans perspective, certainly Braves perspective. You kept looking for, okay, we're going to get healthy. You'll get Michael Harris back. And then Soler gets injured. And now Riley gets injured. And you're still hoping, okay, maybe we get Ozzy back at some point. It's just, when can this team this year get a stretch of games, weeks of worth of games where they have everybody completely healthy in the lineup? We haven't seen that this season from the first day. Sean Murphy getting injured on opening day. And it's been a very frustrating season from the injury standpoint. But Austin Riley, a guy who got off to a slow start, had an injury himself earlier, but had come on and was becoming that, glue guy in the middle of the lineup there again, hitting in the 2-hole, been really good there. So I just really hate this for Austin Riley. Again, we're hopeful it's nothing major, but this point just doesn't look too good.
Yeah, fingers crossed, all of those good things. But again, it's just the latest in a long list of injuries the Braves have had to deal with. And, Austin Riley, I've known him for a long time, and I think players or fans rather have watched players over the years, and you can get a good feeling for how tough they are. I think Austin Riley's about as tough as they come. So to see him in that kind of pain, it had a different feeling, I guess. Every injury, especially the ones we've seen, some major ones, you can kind of tell right away. Others, you just kind of get that sinking feeling, and it hinges on the tests and how it all comes back. But with Austin Riley, you just always felt like, okay, well, he'll get through that. He'll push his way through. He'll gut his way through, if nothing else. But yeah, this one today, it felt a little bit different.
It did. And, he stuck in to run the bases, so they gave you a little bit of hope. But for him to leave the game like that, and Riley, as you said, he's a tough guy. He's not one. He's not going to leave a game, especially, early like that. It kind of made a little bit more sense for Soler the other day because, Braves were already up a good bit. So you thought, okay, maybe just get him out of there for precaution. But, Riley leaving that certainly means that it was bothering him for him to leave a game that early.
Yeah, and you got to consider as well, he got hit on his throwing hand, so that's going to affect him in the field in a variety of ways. And if he's unable to grip and or throw a baseball or dealing with that kind of pain, then obviously you got to make the decision you got to make. I think we've covered that pretty extensively here for not knowing right now what the extent of that is, but certainly for the Braves, of the things that they can't afford, another injury to a major player is pretty high on that list. And Austin Riley would certainly qualify as one of those. Atlanta slugged its way to an 11-3 win on Saturday to even up the series after the disappointment of Friday's game that got away from them. Chris Sale won his 14th game, Jake. He's a triple crown guy right now as far as pitching is concerned. That, for a Braves pitcher, hasn't happened since 1889. Don't worry, I went back and checked. To talk about a pitcher that's having that kind of a dominant season in an organization that has, just off the top of my head, Warren Spahn, Phil Niekro, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz among the Hall of Famers that have pitched for him. That's some pretty rare air for Chris Sale.
Yeah, what an amazing season he's having. One of the better comebacks we've seen in a long time, I think. I mean, it's a guy that's been somewhat irrelevant for 4 years after being one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long time, and most of that because of injury. Said it many times. I thought even last year when he was able to pitch for the Red Sox, I think you could still see the promise there for Chris Sale. And we've talked about the good, foresight by Alex Anthopoulos and the team in front office to go out and get him and see that in him. And again, we've said this numerous times. I don't think they could have imagined what he's done.
Yeah.
But he's been incredible. I mean, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, maybe the best pitcher in baseball. And it's another one of those things that came after another loss in a situation where you're looking for this team to bounce back. And he's done that multiple times this year. He's given them a chance to bounce back from a loss and get back in the win column. They got him plenty of run support in this one, which is great to see. 3 runs in the first inning for Chris Sale. You feel pretty good about your chances right there out of the gate. But he's been so fantastic all year long, all season long. It's crazy. The only real blip that he had was a game against the Oakland Athletics. But outside of that, I mean, he has given this Braves team a chance to win every time he's gone out.
He has, and he did it twice on this road trip. You mentioned, and we've talked about this, the kind of the stopper mentality of, hey, you need to bounce back, you need to end the skid, you need to get back on the right track. Who's the pitcher you want on the mound? Without question, it's Chris Sale this year. So 14-3 now, a sub-270 ERA, 187 strikeouts. Those all totals that lead the National League. I say all that to say triple crown for a pitcher, pretty cool. Hasn't happened in a full season since 2011 when Justin Verlander and Clayton Kershaw did it. How about a triple crown for a hitter? That hasn't happened since 2012. And how about Marcell Ozuna, who took over the lead in the National League batting race? He's batting .309 now. He's 3 homers behind Shohei Ohtani for most in the National League, and he's already leading the league in runs batted in. Jake, that brought up a very interesting question for me. You may have already seen this on social. I had to know. Has a pair of teammates ever won its respective triple crown, a pitcher and a hitter? It has happened one time before, the 1934 New York Yankees, Lou Gehrig and Lefty Gomez. So, if you've done something that hasn't happened, in 90 years, and Lou Gehrig's one of the people that have done it, or have a potential to do something that hasn't happened except for one time in the history of baseball, that's some pretty good stuff. There are 38 games to go. I will stipulate a lot could change here. But the fact that in mid-August we're talking about this just tells you a couple of things. And the top of that list is, we already talked about how good Chris Sale has been, but how about how good Marcell Ozuna has been? And he just continues.
It's pretty incredible. Honestly, if you would have asked me, I'd have said that never happened. But, it has happened one time in the history of the game, as you pointed out. But I think it speaks to, as much as has gone wrong for this Atlanta Braves team this year, those two guys and what they have done. And we've talked about them the most this season because they've carried this team. Chris Sale said it in his post game the other day that Marcell Ozuna has carried this team at times offensively. I think you can say the same about Chris Sale. I know he's had some help. That rotation overall has been much better than the offense overall, but what Chris Sale and Marcell Ozuna have done this season, again, we say it all the time. I don't know where this team would be without them. They're grasping on to a postseason spot, and I don't think they'd be there without those two guys in the seasons that they're having. So it's just truly remarkable. Again, a lot has gone against this Braves team, injury-wise, performance-wise, but those two guys certainly stand out.
Yeah, they do. There's a reason they were all-stars, and there's a reason we've been using the phrase, where would the Braves be without? And fill in the blank is typically Marcell Ozuna, and also put Chris Sale on that list. Braves had to get a winning road trip. There was just no two ways about this, Jake. I mean, you needed the 6 wins. You would have loved the 7th. Obviously, that didn't work in Colorado, but a chance to win all 3 of those series. I felt like a statement series in San Francisco, very much a sign of what the Braves can do or capable of doing. But considering how this road trip started, they were able to answer the call. The bad news, though, is we don't know how bad it is for Austin Riley right now. That hit by pitch in his hand/wrist. We'll find out a little bit more once the team does get home, perhaps as soon as Monday, as far as an update is concerned. And that just has been a theme for this season for the Braves. Injuries have taken their toll on this team, but they have been able to, and I know this may sound cliche, but Jake, next man up has been something the Braves have not only had to utilize, they've had to embrace that all season long. I just don't know who the next man up for a guy like Austin Riley is.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you're talking about, again, your number 2 hitter, the guys, that really can get things going at the top and can get hot, and he himself can carry a lineup. We've seen in the past before. So there's not anybody, to answer that question. There's not anybody that can come in and replace that. I know Luke Williams is the one that came in for him in the game, and he had a hit in this game. He made a couple of good plays over at third base. But, I mean, for everything that Austin Riley does offensively, he's also, I think, a candidate front runner for the Gold Glove Award as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be a huge loss for this team, but you're right. It's somebody else is going to have to step up and fill in there. And it's great that the Braves were able to get, a winning road trip, a 10-game road trip, despite, whatever the competition is. Those are never easy, especially this time of the year. So to be able to win 6-4 or go 6-4 on that trip. Yeah. You'd have liked a little bit more. The game in Colorado, maybe that first game in Anaheim, would have loved to win both of those, but still coming back home with a winning road record or winning road trip, certainly a good thing for this Braves team.
Yeah, very good team for him. I know we got to get out of here. You brought up Austin Riley, what he does with the glove. That play that he made diving up the line against Joe Adell the other day, I mean, that's one I've watched a few different times, and I still come away thinking, like, what in the world was Joe Adell doing? And as most people have said, and I realized kind of after the fact, he was rounding first on his way to second, but he didn't even get to first before Austin Riley got in that throw over there. Just an incredible play. So hopefully the Braves will be getting some good news, a positive update for Austin Riley. We'll all find out together as soon as Monday. When we come back, though, we will talk a little bit more about the pitching we saw in this series, possibly the return of Jorge Soler this week, the return of another Braves pitcher in Reynaldo Lopez, who's going to be on the mound against the Phillies on Tuesday, and much more. It's coming your way on the Braves Postcast. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks, and you can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, all one word, for a first deposit match of up to $100. That code again, Locked On MLB on the Prize Picks app for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Let's talk a little bit about Sunday's game, Jake, and also we'll dabble in Saturday as well. That was a pretty memorable one for the Braves. They win those back-to-back games to take 2 out of 3 from the Los Angeles Angels. Charlie Morton was the man who picked up the win in this one. A pretty good outing for him. He improves to 7-7, backing up the very good outing in the prior one. So putting it into the Jekyll and Hyde act that had been going on really since the start of July for Morton. Braves pick up that 3-1 win, 3 runs on 8 hits, no errors. And then for the Angels, a run on 3 hits, no errors for them. Atlanta now 66-58, and the Los Angeles Angels 53-71. Of course, a lot of this series was the reunion of sorts for Ron Washington and Eric Young with the Braves. It was fun to see and to hear all those stories about the impact, especially Wash made in his time on that club. I mean, Wash is one of those personalities where if you've met him for any amount of time, you're probably going to end up with a cool story to tell. And it was kind of fun to see a little bit of that on display and in the backdrop of winning a series out in Los Angeles, which the Braves very much needed to do.
Yeah, a little bit of Wash magic, maybe get this team going, even if he's on the other side. But, yeah, a good reunion there. And also you got Ronald and Ozzie who were in the dugout too. So that was great to see those guys. So, yeah, everybody getting together in Anaheim there. But good to see Wash. We talked about it a lot this year, just the impact of losing those two guys. Look, I don't know that they could have helped some of the offensive regression we've seen, but obviously, what they mean in the clubhouse and what they just mean for their presence on that team was huge and something that is, certainly felt with the loss of those two guys.
Yeah, all of that stuff is valuable. I mean, as far as the chemistry, the personality of that club, Ron Washington was a huge part of helping to not only share his, but mold that team as well. And that's one of the main reasons or big reasons why the Braves were so happy to have him for as long as they did, but also happy to see him get that opportunity to get back in that chair and manage again for the first time in 10 years. Charlie Morton in this one, 5 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, also a hit batsman. Unfortunately, that came with the bases loaded. That charged his only run to his ledger, 7 strikeouts. Charlie got started early with the punch-outs, Jake. I was wondering if this was going to be one of those kind of maybe career-high kind of outings for him. He settled in, was done in the 6th as the pitch count started to climb up. But overall, I mean, you needed to have something from Charlie that resembled the kind of start that he was able to put on the last time, and he was able to deliver on a day where the offense did just enough to help the Braves win this series.
Yeah, good start from Charlie Morton here. No hits through 4 innings, I believe, and then ran into some trouble there in that 5th inning. Loaded the bases, no outs, and was able to limit it. Got a big double play in this one. The Braves hit into plenty over the weekend themselves, but got a big double play there when they needed to. Like I said, unfortunate, kind of overcooked that curveball that had been so good for them. I pointed this out before on the postcast and also on social media. When Sean Murphy sees a pitch that is on for a pitcher, he will call it 50% curveball. I know Charlie Morton throws his curveball a lot, and usually it's his most used pitch, but 50% of the time, Charlie Morton throwing a curveball in this one, and it was really good, 11 whiffs on 21 swings against that pitch. But and that spot, and it tends to happen every now and then with Charlie Morton. He's going to hit that left-handed batter with the back foot on a curveball. It just happens. But, good job by Charlie Morton to come in here, and a good job by Brian Snitker to, be aggressive and get Dylan Lee up in that spot, realizing maybe that Charlie Morton was losing it, because we've seen at times Charlie Morton can be cruising along and then just have that one bad inning where things get away from him. So I know a lot of people talk about Brian Snitker's bullpen usage. I wanted to give him some props there because you had Dylan Lee ready to go up in that inning if things got out of hand. But, fortunately he was able to settle things down and come back out the next inning and get the first out to start off the 6th as well.
Yeah, and bullpen usage, I mean, it's an inexact science. You can't just warm everybody up just in case. I mean, there are a lot of factors to go into it, I can assure you. And sometimes every manager would say, well, I would have done it a different way, but that's the difference in kind of managing in hindsight. But you're right in that one. And with Dylan Lee, I think the Braves have something here that's going to be increasingly important, Jake, because as we found out on this road trip, AJ Minter, I think we talked about this a few days ago, a potential season-ending surgery for that hip ailment for him, may not have time to get back to the Braves this year. Dylan Lee, all of a sudden, to me, becomes maybe the most important lefty in that bullpen. I know Aaron Bummer has also done a lot for the Braves down there, but Dylan Lee, after a lost season in 2023, all of a sudden, not only has he done the work so far, put up some great numbers, been one of the Braves' most important relievers, he could have a very important role moving forward.
He certainly could. Whichever role you want to use him in. Obviously, Joe Jimenez is very good against left-handers as well, so you can kind of use him with those reverse splits. But Dylan Lee, probably being that one left-hander that I think probably you trust the most. I know Aaron Bummer's kind of had some ups and downs. I feel like he's been good for the most part, and I trust Aaron Bummer in some of those spots. But Dylan Lee, obviously has been really good, had a really good season, and he's also that guy that you can use in this type of situation. You can bring him in the 6th inning to get out of an inning there, maybe pitch one more, and then turn it over to those guys on the back end. So whichever way that you use Dylan Lee, that's why a lot of people were wondering why he was sent down. We obviously know because it's an options game, and he had one, but he's one of the better relievers in this bullpen, having a good season. Again, you can use him in a variety of ways, whether to come in and get out a tough lefty or to come in and kind of bridge that gap and give you an inning plus like he did today.
Inning and 2/3, 1 hit, no walks, no runs, 4 strikeouts for Dylan Lee, who lowered his ERA to 1.85. Got to talk about ERAs that have been falling really since the middle of June. How about Raisel Iglesias? Jake, he has not allowed an earned run since the 16th of June. He's allowed just 1 run over that entire stretch. He has pitched over 20 innings there, has only issued, I believe, 3 walks against 26 strikeouts. To say that Raisel Iglesias is dialed in right now would be quite the understatement. He came on and locked down a save in this game as well. That was his 26th of the season. So some pretty good stuff happening for the Braves stopper as well, the figurehead, if you will, of every bullpen, a really good closer, and that's exactly what Raisel Iglesias has been this year.
Yeah, I love watching him pitch, and the only surprise today is that it took him more than 10 pitches to get it done. He usually comes in and can get it done a lot sooner, but I love watching Raisel Iglesias pitch. I know he's not that typical, blow it by you type of closer, but just the good stuff that he has on his pitches, a good changeup, that slider, and he does have good velocity on that fastball. So I really love watching him pitch and good control. He's going to go out there and throw strikes and not put a bunch of runners on base with free passes. So he's been outstanding, similar to when the Braves traded for him a couple of years ago in that second half that he had.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things that as long as you've got these options and this depth in that bullpen, you're going to feel pretty good about it. Knowing who's getting the final 3 outs, that is obviously helpful. And Raisel Iglesias, I think, has done it as well as anybody this year. But having guys that like Dylan Lee, having a guy like Joe Jimenez, who was also active on Sunday, Pierce Johnson, I mean, there's a lot of depth in this bullpen. I think even without A.J. Minter, you can still feel pretty confident that the Braves have the arms that they need there to try to win that battle of the bullpens in the high leverage situations that you face in a month like October, which I think we know all about. How about Ramon Laureano? We got to talk about him some because he homered again and is turning into a pretty nice pickup with the Braves. 6 home runs now, 12 runs knocked in. He's batting .286, slugging nearly .550, Jake. I don't know that I had this on my bingo card of important Braves in-season pickups. You know the name Laureano. You've seen some of the things that he's done, but he felt like he was so far removed from those days. But here in Atlanta, Jake, it looks like he's unlocked something at the plate. I know there's been a couple of gaffes, one in the field, one on the bases, but stuff happens. But Laureano has managed to shrug that off and continue to give the Braves a pretty steady contributor when he gets in the lineup.
Batting 5th today as well. So moving on up. And, the way that he's been swinging the bat with the Braves, I certainly think that makes some sense. Look, I don't know how long this run is going to go, but the Braves need as many hot bats. Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the way the lineup is, and especially if you're losing another key contributor to that, if a guy is hot, just put him in there. And we'll see. Hopefully it lasts the rest of the season. But either way, it's been huge, similar to when Acuna went down and Kelenic went off. He had a really great month stretch there that really helped this Braves team. Maybe that's all this will be for Laureano, but certainly it is much needed with this Braves lineup that they need, some of these guys to get hot and go along with Marcell Ozuna and Riley, obviously, when he was in the lineup. So great to see that. Michael Harris has been good since he's come back as well. That has helped this lineup and in center field, just watching him glide over to catch baseballs. I think that's been big for the outfield as well. Laureano and Kelenic both able to go to a corner spot where I think they are a little bit better defensively. So again, some really good signs from this series, from this weekend overall. It's just that big cloud looming that we've talked about plenty on this one in the Austin Riley injury.
Yeah, there is, and there's just no way around that, and it won't feel any better, and it may not feel any better at all, but it won't feel any better till you get some kind of clarity to that, and that is something we have to wait a little bit longer for. But as far as the Laureano addition to the Braves and the hot streaks that you see from time to time for maybe a guy like Jared Kelenic after Acuna went down, it takes a lot of different players at different times over the course of the season to do what the Braves are hoping to do, and there may be no better timing than that for Laureano right now for this Braves club. When we come back, we will discuss the upcoming series against the Philadelphia Phillies, a head-to-head, a 3-gamer that is going to be happening beginning on Tuesday at Truist Park, and it's going to be Reynaldo Lopez coming off the injured list to get everything going. We'll talk about that and much more as the Braves Postcast continues. If you love sports and you love them so much you never want them to stop, then you're going to love FanDuel, because FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most of your summer. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon, as FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. The more injuries for the Braves as they've dealt with on this road trip. You hope to have Jorge Soler back this week. Obviously, still waiting on the news about Austin Riley. An injury-riddled season for sure. More tests are going to have to be run on that hand and wrist for Riley. Brian Snitker saying after the game it was inconclusive. Perhaps we'll know something as soon as Monday. I keep saying this because this feels like the headline of the weekend, unfortunately. And keep in mind, Jake, I don't know that we've gotten to this yet, but this was after Travis d'Arnaud went through pretty much the exact same kind of a scare on Saturday. It's a little bit crazy what the Braves have been faced with at times this year. And again, we just kind of keep our fingers crossed that maybe Riley dodged a bullet the way d'Arnaud did.
Certainly hope so. I mean, it looked pretty scary. d'Arnaud's one too. He's a tough guy. He's a catcher, but he got hit. I mean, that looked like it hurt, and he had to leave the game as well. So it's again, one of those seasons you obviously just kind of expect the worst at this point with the way that the year has gone, but hopefully he's okay. He can get back in there. He's been a great contributor offensively for this team for a while now, and that great tandem with Sean Murphy. So again, hopefully you've dodged a bullet with Travis d'Arnaud, and hopefully we dodge one with Riley as too. You hate to see it when you get those initial tests. You want it to come back and everything just be negative, and then you just take some other tests just to kind of verify that. But coming back inconclusive, again, just with the way the season has gone, I'm sure a lot of Braves fans not feeling too great about that.
Yeah, and those tests were X-rays and a CT scan, according to Justin Toscano of the AJC. So those are inconclusive. MRI to come for Austin Riley as far as what that next step is. Again, fingers crossed for Riley that he'll be able to avoid a lengthy stay on the injured list. And for the Braves, something they can ill afford right now Braves holding on to a wild card spot, but can they get back in the division race, Jake? I think is a question we were asking not long ago. Then it felt like the Braves may never get back in the division because they went on to lose 7 out of 8 pretty quickly there. The Phillies, though, have had a really bad second half. I mean, a second half that, by the numbers, worse than Atlanta's for much of it, at least heading into this weekend, it certainly was. It's, I guess, a debate that we may not have the answer to as to whether or not you want to get into the postseason as a wild card or win your division. It hasn't been particularly great to be a division winner in the postseason, not just for the Braves, but for some of the other teams that amass some of baseball's best records. But you also face the fact of maybe you have to burn up your best pitchers to win a wild card series. I don't know how you fall on this. I think the bottom line for the Braves is get into October by whatever means necessary. But if there is to be a road to the NL East and a 7th consecutive division title, to make a long story short, you're going to have to do some damage against the Phillies head-to-head. They have an opportunity starting on Tuesday with 3 games.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of over at this point a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to say anything's over in baseball, but you're 7 games back. You're pretty much going to have to sweep this series and win the next series in Philadelphia, which is a 4-game series, and hope that a lot of things go your way and the Phillies continue to stumble and the Braves take off, and be consistent, which we haven't seen all year outside of the first 3 weeks of the season. So feels like a tall, big upward climb for this Braves team to be able to get that job done. But you got it in front of it. I mean, you got an opportunity. You can play these games and certainly, got a good chance to win them. But, it is going to be a tough battle for this Braves team if they're going to continue that run of division titles again and come back and beat the Phillies.
Yeah, Phillies 11-16 in the second half, I believe, coming into Sunday's game. And they lost on Sunday, so that would make them, 11-17 in the second half. Not numbers that you would expect out of a club that was rolling the way that the Phillies were in the first half, but it just goes to show you that over the course of 162 games, there are going to be peaks and valleys, and the Phillies have definitely been in a valley more so than not in the second half. Meanwhile, Reynaldo Lopez comes off the IL to start on Tuesday. That move has been confirmed, just pending, obviously, the roster decision the Braves will make. Max Fried and Spencer Schwellenbach will follow against Philadelphia. Phillies are going to fire Zach Wheeler, then Aaron Nola in the first 2 games, to be determined, at least for the moment, in Game 3. Any surprise for you, Jake, with not finding a way to mix Chris Sale into the mix here? I know it'd be throwing on, quote-unquote, traditional 4 days rest, and that's something that, I don't know, at this point, if you're aiming at this division or maybe just aiming to win baseball games, it's good to have Chris Sale out there.
Yeah, he gives you a good chance to win. I thought they would do that. Maybe not even more so to get Chris Sale in this Phillies series, but I thought it'd be an opportunity to push Schwellenbach back a little bit. I think somebody they're probably even more concerned about with his innings. But, yeah, certainly you want Chris Sale in there, and facing your division rival, even if you're trying to make a push for this division or not. But would love to have Chris Sale out there every 5th day the rest of the way. Because he gives you your best chance to win. Has been your best pitcher all year long. So I thought they would do that. A little surprised that they didn't.
Yeah, but if it was somebody other than Reynaldo Lopez coming back, if it was dipping down into the minors and asking whoever it is to come up and start against the Phillies, that I think would be more of a head scratching maneuver. But as Brian Snitker said about a week or two ago now, at this point, we're pretty much to the point where trying to have the strategy of working in this guy and this guy and this guy to give all this extra rest, it's just not feasible. That doesn't mean that they won't be able to through off days or maybe some pitchers that they really have some conviction in the matchup, whether that be an AJ Smith-Shawver perhaps, or maybe Ian Anderson at some point. He's been pitching pretty well at AAA Gwinnett. There are some other options, but I think that kind of takes a back seat to riding with a pretty good 5 starters that the Braves have. I say pretty good, kind of tongue-in-cheek. You got Chris Sale, who could win the Cy Young in the National League. Max Fried, we obviously know what he is. Reynaldo Lopez is an all-star this year. Charlie Morton has pitched well, and Spencer Schwellenbach has been he's been a revelation in this rotation. That's a pretty good starting 5, Jake, to try to go down the stretch and win as many games as you can and punch your ticket to October.
Yeah, starting pitching has not been the issue this year. Keeping some of those guys healthy maybe has been in case of Fried and Lopez, but this rotation has carried this Braves team. It's kept them in it to this point, and if you can keep those guys healthy down the stretch and put them out there every 5th day, you feel really good about your chances to get into the postseason, and then again get those guys healthy in the postseason, where pitching typically plays up even more. You feel good about your chances, but glad to see Reynaldo Lopez back. I think he threw 71 pitches in his rehab outing with Gwinnett, so we'll kind of see. I would imagine they probably cap him at 80, 85 innings. Tough matchup coming back, obviously, against the Phillies, even though they have been struggling a bit here lately, as you pointed out, but good to have him back in the rotation again. Hopefully keep these guys healthy down the stretch. Hopefully Max Fried is okay. It's that kind of season, Grant, where you're just sitting on the bench this year and you might get injured. It's just crazy here for the Atlanta Braves when it comes to injuries.
Yeah, that's a wild one on Saturday. We did not even touch on that, but an errant throw goes into the dugout and Max Fried gets hit in the head. Hopefully he's not going to be dealing with any ill effects from that moving forward. But yeah, things you could do without any kind of fluke injuries. Yeah, the Braves would love to cross that off the list of possibilities. Looking at the wild card real quick, the Braves with these back-to-back wins, still holding that 2-game advantage over the Mets for that final wild card spot. Meanwhile, the Diamondbacks have kind of slid back down after losing 3 in a row over the weekend, and they are 2.5 games ahead of the Braves for the second spot. Padres atop the wild card standings at 3.5, and both those clubs have kind of been nipping at the heels of the Los Angeles Dodgers as well. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. And for more on that, I'm sure you can find any of a variety of other Locked On podcasts that can cover you, whether that be San Diego, Los Angeles, or Arizona. And if we don't have one of those, I'm sure we'll start one. That aside, the Braves are going to be starting Reynaldo Lopez in game 1 of this 3-game series on Tuesday, 7-4, 2.06 ERA. Zach Wheeler, 12-5 with a 2.72. I always say this, Jake, and it tends to be true. How many times do you get in a series with the Phillies where the Braves don't face Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola? Because, spoiler alert, that's going to be the case again in this series.
Yeah, they seem to always be lined up for these matchups, and as they should. Look, Braves have done pretty well against good pitchers this year. It's the ones that you expect them to go off against that they tend to struggle with, guys maybe they haven't seen before. But Zach Wheeler obviously having a very good year, and he's right there with Chris Sale. I mean, I think he'd be one of the strong contenders with Chris Sale for that NL Cy Young Award. So a chance to help out your buddy Chris Sale and maybe get after Zach Wheeler in this one. But a tough matchup, certainly be a good test for this Braves offense. They've been swinging the bats better here as of late. Tons of base runners in that Anaheim series, even if they didn't maybe score a lot of runs on that Friday and Sunday game. But hope to see them, continue to put the pressure on.
Yeah, could certainly use a breakthrough performance, and Zach Wheeler is as good a candidate for the Braves, being that they have had some success against him at times, and timeliness as far as getting to go and starting that series with a win. They would very much like to touch him up, but he is one of the tougher pitchers in the National League, and that will be quite a challenge. Reynaldo Lopez, meanwhile, making his second start of the second half and his first in 3 weeks as he gets the ball. Tuesday, 7:20 p.m. Eastern Time is the first pitch for the Braves and the Phillies. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube and Locked On Braves, wherever you get your podcasts. And once again, the Braves take a series from the Angels. They await word on Austin Riley's injury status, though, after this winning road trip. That was not the punctuation mark the Braves wanted to put on it, but perhaps we'll find out more. Jake and I will be back after game 1 of that Philly series on Tuesday. Until then, for Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We'll catch you next time. So long, everyone.